Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the St. Tammany Parish Planning Commission meeting of April the 9th. We have, as the clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Dougherty,
Here.
Ms. Cassabon, Mr. Lauren, Mr. Hines, Mr. Richard, Mr. Willie, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Davis, Mr. Manella, Mr. Mackey, Mr. Randolph. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Over to my right on the railing there are appeal cards and speaker cards. If you disagree with some decision this commission makes and wish to appeal it to the council, please get one, fill it out, and turn it into staff. Speaker cards, basically the same thing. If you wish to speak on any of these items, please complete one of the speaker cards and turn it into staff, and they will get it up here to us. Phones and pagers, please silence them or turn them off. If we have folks that want to speak on a particular issue, public speaking is 10 minutes on each side with a 5-minute rebuttal. And if there's discussion that you wish to have with someone here, please exit the building. Don't go out in the lobby area because a lot of the sound still comes back into this area. Please rise for the invocation by Ron. Dale, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item we have on our agenda is the approval of the March 12th, 2013 minutes. Each of you were given a copy in your packet, and I'm hoping you had an opportunity to review them. And I'll accept a motion for approval or any corrections that need to be made.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Dale, seconded by Bill.
And actually read them.
Okay. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Consent calendar, performance obligations, and entering parish right-of-way. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically dispensed by vote as approved and or as per staff comments. Items pulled from the consent calendar shall be discussed and voted on individually. Any commissioner have a item they wish to pull?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull the Aubrey Heights,
Okay.
the Mandeville subdivision,
Malleyville?
Malleyville, yeah,
Okay.
I misenunciated, thank you. The two entering the parish right-of-way request,
Okay.
that's it for me.
Okay. I would like to go, personally like to pull the Functor Club Estates and the Tarabella.
I'll make that as a motion.
Thank you. I'll second. All right, so we have left on the consent calendar, the Avita Trace subdivision, 60-day notice, and Lakeshore Estates, 60-day notice are the only two items left on the consent calendar. I'll accept the motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Hines. Please vote.
Would you clear, please, first?
We got a rookie here now. We got to help him along here.
Bear with me. Not as pretty, but bear with me. Okay, everybody vote?
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. First item is Functor Club Estates, filing 2 subdivision, Ward 1, District 1, amounts $48,000, expires April 26, 2013. The debtor is TCE Properties, LLC. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Marty Dean. Staff, you have any comment, other than what was in the packets?
No additional comments.
Okay, the developer, responded that he's getting you the as-built drawings, is that correct, Paul?
I believe we're still waiting on the as-built drawing.
Okay, but we did get a response. I
We
know
did,
that
we
the
did get a
gentleman-
response and should be getting the as-built shortly.
Yeah. Okay, and that's what we've asked for, is either an appearance before this body or correspondence indicating why it needs to be extended. So this was tabled at the March 12th meetings, or postponed at the March 12th meeting. So we need to go ahead and approve the extension. I'll accept a motion
Mr.
on
Chairman,
that. Yes, sir.
as the champion for getting these people to give us some response, I did like the fact that they did give us a timely and a rather detailed response to our question as to why this needed to be extended. And I really want to commend them for doing that, and all of them should. And therefore, I'd like to make a motion that we extend.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Going to ask clear and revote, please. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 2, under performance obligations, Terabella subdivision, parenthesis TIA, Ward 1, District 1, amount is $300,000, expires May 15th, 2013. The debtor is Terabella Group LLC. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Marty Dean. Staff, you have any comments on?
The above referenced performance obligation expires May 15th, 2013, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the April 9th, 2013 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. The following uncompleted items exist. 4 vehicular turning lanes need to be constructed. These improvements are to be delayed for the following reasons. Traffic does not justify the improvements at this time. The Department of Engineering will determine when these improvements are required. The performance obligation was established by a traffic mitigation agreement on November 3rd, 2008, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer petitioner will be advised that he will be required to conform with all current ordinances when applicable as a condition of this extension. The developer petitioner has been notified by the Department of Engineering on February 25th, 2013 to explain in writing or appear in the April 9th, 2013 meeting to explain in detail why an extension of this time is needed. A copy of the reply is attached. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until the work is warranted and satisfactorily accomplished.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Again, say I'm the one that championed having these people make a reply of some type. And in this case, they were asked to reply either in writing or appear. They did apply in writing, and I think with a very detailed and sufficient explanation as to why we should extend it. And I move that we extend.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Richard seconded. Matthews made the motion. Mike, is there any reason, is there a parish ordinance or something that says we can't extend something like this for a year, where it's going to be based on the traffic and everything? I mean, instead of having it come up time and time again?
The obligation is required for a year. The extensions are permitted as deemed appropriate. Now, there's no restriction or limitation on how long they can be extended. However, past protocols have been in 6-month increments. Absent a compelling interest or reason why 6 months would not be sufficient, it would be okay to extend it for a greater period of time. But I think that the commission, needs to consider whether or not it would be prudent to have a 6-month review to if for no other purpose, to confirm that progress is being made in the performance. But again, if circumstances are such that that isn't a necessity or warranted, then it could be extended for a longer period.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mr. Matthews?
Mr. Chairman, I kind of feel like the 6 month is appropriate. It's not too much trouble for them to come before us with a letter twice a year. The other thing is that going out further than that, we don't know what's going to happen in 12 months. If there's a reason for the developer that they feel like they need 12 months, or they're relatively sure nothing will happen for 12 months, and here's the reason, then I would not be adverse to granting the 12 months, but I certainly wouldn't be interested in just arbitrarily, so let's go 12 months so we don't have to hear it. That's
Well,
kind of what
but-
we signed on for.
But this particular one, basically, nothing's going to be done on this until the traffic is up to a point that it requires it. And that's the reason I was particularly asking
When-
about this one here.
When is that going to be?
Well, I mean, it might be 4 years down the road,
It
so.
might be 3 months, you know, I
Well,
mean,
that's true.
I don't know, but if they feel like it's not gonna happen for years,
Then-
I would not be adverse to them coming to us or writing us and telling us, don't call this every 6 months, give me 2 years or whatever, and if it's a good reason, I'd be
Okay,
happy to look at it.
all right. Mr. Davis?
Yes, I don't mind listening to Paul explain exactly from the engineering point of view, why every 6 months does he feel like it needs, because it's gonna be his determination on when this lane really definitely has to be done. So I have to agree with Mr. Matthews.
Okay. Mr. Morone?
Mr. Chairman, Paul Marone on behalf of the Terabella Group. With regards to when the commission may review this again, certainly if it's your decision to do it every 6 months, we don't have any problem responding and giving you an update. I would say that I do not expect that the threshold for the traffic will be met within the next 6 months to trip the necessity of the turning lane. So in this case, I think you would be safe if you determine you want to go out a year, but certainly we'll comply with whatever the commission decides.
Okay, thank you. On this one?
So not everybody's voted, just
Not
4
everybody.
people so far. Those who hadn't voted, would you go ahead and vote now, or are you ready?
Did we call for the vote?
I think you cleared. No, I don't,
No,
No.
only 5 listed.
no, we didn't ever really get to a vote on it. Okay, so Pug, gonna need you to vote. Richard, we got, okay, motion carries, thank you. Next item is Audrey Heights subdivision, Ward 3, District 3. Amount is $348,268, expires May 25th, 2013. The debtor's Audrey Heights Development LP, Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Red Thompson. Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires May 25th, 2013, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the April 9th, 2013 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. The following uncompleted items exist: lift station, water system, alternate water main, as-built drawings are needed. All test results for roadway needed to be furnished. Resolve the encroachment at the detention pond. We've been advised by the developer's engineer that they are in process of preparing as-built drawings. All construction work has been completed. However, the above items need to be furnished before the performance obligation can be released and the warranty obligation established. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on the November 12, 2008 meeting and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer will be advised that they will be required to conform with all current ordinances when applicable as a condition of this extension. The developer has been notified by the Department of Engineering on February 25th, 2013 to explain in writing or appear at the April 9th, 2013 meeting to explain in detail why an extension of time is needed. Attached is a copy of the developer's letter of explanation dated March 25th, 2013. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until the work is satisfactorily accomplished.
Thank you. The encroachment, I think that the letter said to be taken care of by April 1st, I believe. Remember? Huh?
End of April.
End of April? Okay. All right. All right, is there anyone here in the public wish to speak on this? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews?
Well, since all of this stuff seems to depend upon a completion of an ALTA as-built survey, or at least most of the open items do, which that most of concerns me, and that they are saying they will provide the other things, the bacterial, letter of acceptance, roadway test, et cetera, when they provide this as-built survey sometime by the end of April. I don't see why we're not going to just wait till next month and get it all done at one time. I would move that we postpone this until the next meeting.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to postpone Audrey Heights subdivision, Ward 3, District 3, till the May.
Go ahead, bring it to his attention.
12th.
That's what I was.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, the performance obligation expires May 5th. When's our meeting?
May 25th.
May 25. Expires May 25.
Okay.
And
well,
we got
I'm
two
look-
different dates.
Looking at staff's report, or staff's letter, actually, to the Planning Commission here.
Yeah, mine says May 5th also.
All right.
Performance obligation,
Yeah,
May 25th.
that's when it, I mean, there it could very well just be an error, so I'm not sure which is which. So Paul,
there-
do you know?
I'd have to check. There are two letters, one conflicts with the other.
So if we extend it, or postpone it until the May meeting, and it's actually May the 5th, then we have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I would tend to go with what the letter says, to be honest with you. It could just be a typo on the agenda.
Wait, no, I see the this is Ruby Street that's May 5th.
Audrey Heights, right now.
Audrey Heights is May 25th, Ruby Street's
So May
May 5th.
25th is Audrey Heights, okay.
Yeah.
So it's 25th, so they can table it then.
Okay, so it is May the 25th. We have a motion and a second to postpone until the May planning meeting. Any further, well, no discussion on postpone. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item is entering parish right-of-way, servitudes, easement. First item is entering parish right-of-way, Avery Drive, Ward 8, District 13. Request to enter parish right-of-way for the purpose of laying fiber optic cable. Those weren't pulled, were they?
The Mailingville one?
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip it? I'm sorry. You're right. We'll back up and pick up the last item on page 1. Malleyville subdivision, Ruby Street, TIA, Ward 3, District 6, amounts $24,000. The debtor is William Ball, Parish Council Representatives, Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
Okay, to clarify what this letter is saying, basically, instead of establishing a warranty obligation for $7,200, they continue the performance obligation at $24,000. So the only thing we're waiting for is a 1-year warranty period to expire before we can release the performance obligation. We're not waiting on any specific action.
What's the net difference between a warranty obligation and a performance obligation to the parish?
Usually, we let the performance obligation go and establish a warranty obligation once it's under warranty, and as you can see on this example, it would have been a substantially smaller amount, but the developer chose to leave the performance obligation a larger amount
But-
which protected the parish more anyway.
Well, but doesn't a performance obligation, and I'm gonna ask our counsel to help me with this, but doesn't a performance obligation guarantee the performance? And if they have performed, then we can't call a performance obligation. But the warranty says that the work will last a year. So I see a difference in what we can do with a performance obligation and a warranty obligation, and I may not understand them in this context.
Well, I can tell you, Mr. Matthews, in the typical application, a performance obligation is required to assure that parish infrastructure is not damaged during the course of construction of the project, whatever it may be. A warranty obligation is where the developer, once development has occurred, warrants that the infrastructure operates according to how it is designed and required to operate. Those are the two differences. So in other words, if a development of a subdivision results in the damage of surrounding parish roads or drainage systems, the performance obligation is intended to meet the repair costs of that damage in the event that the developer does not do it him or herself. In a warranty obligation, the developer warrants that the streets are constructed to parish standards, the drainage systems flow and operate according to parish requirements, and those funds are available to correct problems if it is discovered after development is complete to make those corrections or repairs.
So the performance obligation makes sure they complete it in a proper fashion. Once they have completed it, then a warranty obligation is what is called for. So if 6 months after they've completed it, there's a problem, we can't call the performance obligation because he's already finished. We would have to call a warranty obligation. So it seems to me that electing to pick one or the other doesn't really accomplish what we need accomplished. The performance obligation is up until the end of the project, and the warranty obligation is thereafter.
Well, you're right, typically so. Now, maybe Paul can explain if there's any uniqueness to this particular undertaking that would warrant or make it more advisable for the parish to maintain the performance obligation in place as opposed to shifting over to a warranty obligation.
I don't have an answer for that. I'd have to look to see what the agreement was, and I wasn't a part of it, so.
Paul, in Charles Williams' letter to the commission, the developer elected not to establish the warranty obligation, but to extend the $24,000 performance obligation instead. The one-year requirement to warrant the work has now been accomplished. Now, I'm misunderstanding it. To me, that's reading that the 1 year has.
Oh, I see. So it has been released.
Is that right?
Yes, second to last line, therefore it is recommended that the performance obligation be released.
Okay.
My concern is we allowed the developer or contractor to go for a year with a performance obligation that we may not have been applicable to warranty work. It appears to me that we may have made a mistake allowing him to continue his performance obligation, even though it's for more money, but we would have been might have had a very difficult time enforcing the performance obligation when what we would have wanted to enforce was a warranty obligation.
And if I could add something, Mr. Matthews, I think what is perhaps most important in this situation is the intent of the parties. By looking at engineering's letter to the commission, it clearly states that the developer intends to extend the $24,000 performance obligation for the purposes of arguably addressing the reasons why the parish would otherwise require a warranty obligation. From a practical standpoint, it sounds like he is believing that from an economical point of view, he already has a performance obligation in place. He'll just extend that for a period of time rather than going out and establishing a new and separate obligation. If the commission thinks it may be prudent for the engineering department to issue a letter to the developer and clarify its intent by accepting the performance obligation, I think that would be appropriate under the circumstances.
Well, in this particular case, the year has passed no matter what, whether we had a warranty or performance obligation or whatever. I'm just concerned in the future that by allowing this to occur, we may be putting the parish at some jeopardy that they would not be able to call on the warranty when it was needed because it was a performance obligation. And I think somebody needs to take a look at exactly what occurs here, because on the surface, it appears to me, without having done any legal research, that this could be a problem.
Hey, Bill, you're right this time. I think we do need to look at, first of all, I'll make a motion that we release the performance obligation.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion, we do need to look administratively as to whether we don't have a right to just arbitrarily substitute performance and warranty bonds obligations. That's an insurance company issue. I don't think intent always is going to work in our favor. So we need to look at administrative.
Paul, explain to me what a provide required traffic circulation is.
Where you,
Well, up at the top, where it's got reference center parish right of way, provide required traffic circulation, TIA. Traffic impact analysis is a TIA, right?
yeah, TI is traffic impact analysis.
And so part of the TIA is the required traffic circulation, is that correct?
Yeah, I think a plan showing how the traffic's gonna
Okay,
operate on the road.
all right. All right, so on this particular item, if I'm reading everything correctly, we need a motion to release the performance obligation of $24,000 as the performance has been completed and it's 1 year past the date of completion based on Mr. Williams' letter,
Correct.
okay?
We had a motion. Todd made the motion. I seconded it.
The motion was to,
Release.
okay? All right, then we just need a vote. Please vote. You guys gotta keep the old man straight here now.
We're trying, it's hard, we're trying.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, now entering parish rights of way. Entering parish right of way, Avery Drive, Ward 8, District 13. Request to enter parish right of way for the purpose of laying fiber optic cable. Petitioner Southern Light LLC. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Richard Artigue. Staff?
Now therefore be resolved, but, did you need me to read all this?
I think.
I would say probably not.
Okay.
Okay, I think Mr. Matthews asked that this be pulled, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
For-
let's dispense with the staff report unless something comes up, and I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Matthews to see what reason he pulled it.
One question I have, as sometimes happens, we get these after the work has been completed. Is that the case here? Or do we know?
I don't believe they've laid the fiber optic yet.
Okay. It's my opinion, right or wrong, that something as important as allowing somebody to enter the parish right away to do something is really not something that we ought to do with a consent calendar. I also think that the resolution as it is drawn shows that a specific motion is being made, and there is a specific vote on that particular motion. That's why I pulled it. I would move that unless somebody knows why we wouldn't, that we allow the laying of fiber optic cables is a good thing and that we do it, and I would move that we allow the entrance on the parish right-of-way.
Okay, we have
I'll
a
second
motion. And Mr. Hines, second? You have any, okay, turned his light off, okay. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries, thank you. Next item is entering parish right-of-way, Crawford Road, Ward 3, District 2. Request to enter parish right-of-way for the purpose to jack and bore a 4-inch drainage line. Petitioner is Acadian Communities LLC. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Dennis Sharp. Paul, do you want to dispense of the staff report on this one also?
I was just going to comment, the purpose of this is to create a retention pond for commercial development where there's very little ditch to drain into. So you need to go across the street to discharge their stormwater.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, I believe you
And
did.
again, the reason I pulled it is because I think it's important for us to consider exactly what they're doing. Paul's given us a good report on that, and it does require, I think, a specific vote anyway. I therefore move to allow the entrance on the parish right-of-way.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis and Mr. Hines, I believe. Please vote. Motion carries, thank you. All right, that's the end of the consent calendar. Next item is tentative subdivision review, SD 13-04-001, Ironwood, Ward 6, District 6. The developer, owner, Warehouser Real Estate Development. The engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed rural subdivision comprising of 15 lots for 111.13 acres. It's located roughly at the intersection of Kegpeller Road and Louisiana Highway 435. That'll be northeast of Beach Springs. Comments, number one, the proposed development has jurisdictional wetlands, therefore the developer should be required to submit a copy of an approved Army Corps of Engineers permit to the Department of Engineering, if applicable, prior to receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Comment two, Parish Code requires a land clearing permit to be applied for and obtained through the Department of Development prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Comment three, the developer is not providing a typical cul-de-sac design for the right-of-way at the northern end of Emerywood Drive. Parish Code requires a 60-foot wide radius cul-de-sac with the roadway paved to a hard surface standard. The developer proposes a lesser radius for the cul-de-sac and wishes to use crushed limestone for the wearing surface to these two lots, which are lots, I believe, 4 and 5, I believe. Comment number four, Parish Code requires that all lots within a subdivision must have public road frontage. However, the developer is proposing a private drive to access lots 4 and 5, which are assuming the wearing surface is aggregate in nature. Therefore, the staff recommends that the developer be required to meet Parish Code and provide the necessary right-of-way standards inclusive of street width, cul-de-sac, and hard surface paving. Comment 5, the developer has not depicted detention areas for the subdivision, and the Department of Engineering has some comments.
Floodplain storage must be maintained. Roadside ditch side slopes must be no steeper than 3 horizontal and 1 vertical. The tentative plan does not show a retention pond. Retention cannot be waived at this location. Restrictive covenant number 11 should also require the finished floor elevation to be 12 inches above the crown of the street, unless waived by the Department of Engineering. For the Department of Engineering signature line, please change it to Director of St. Tammany Parish Department of Engineering. The total acreage of 230.346 acres is shown, and the tabulation is too large for the footprint shown. This is evidently one phase of a large proposed subdivision. Off-site drainage must be calculated and drainage easement structures provided as needed. Need stormwater site plan indicating BMP selection and placement with legend and BMP details for preliminary. Need a copy of the LDEQ stormwater permit letter with AIN prior to a work order. Need a copy of the SWIP maintained on construction site for stormwater inspections. Entire proposed subdivision needs to be shown on the tentative plan, even if it will be constructed in phases. Once entire subdivision is shown, a determination as to whether traffic study is needed can be made. A DOTD driveway permit would be required. The entrance must meet ordinance requirements.
Okay, thank you, Paul. On that item 4, Paul, unless waived by the Department of Engineering, why would the Department of Engineering waive the 12-inch requirement above the crown of the street?
Under most circumstances, we wouldn't. In some cases, on a steeply sloped lot and larger properties, you may have somebody putting a house hundreds of feet off the street, for example, or it may be that the house is going to be 10 feet below the street because it's on the side of a hill. So, I mean, there can be examples where it's reasonable. We occasionally waive it. It's not, it's probably less than 1% of the house permits.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you. Good evening. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm. I represent the owner and the developer, which is Weyerhaeuser Real Estate Development Company. Let me respond to each comment, first starting with Department of Development. Number 1 is understood, and technically the wetlands is not an issue for tentative, but we appreciate the forewarning and recognize our obligations in that regard. The same thing with regard to comment number 2. With regard to comment 3, we would like to amend our plan, and we'll submit a new tentative plan that will indicate that the radius of the cul-de-sac will in fact meet code, but we would appreciate being able to place crushed limestone in that cul-de-sac in the event that we are able to extend the subdivision at some point. Obviously, it would extend to the north, and that's the reason we'd like to do the crushed limestone. We will, though, put it to code in terms of radius and any other reasonable requirements in that regard. With regard to item 4, if you'll take a look at lots 4 and 5 on your plan, the only wetlands in this subdivision of significance is the crossing from Burlwood Place West across the wetlands to lots 4 and 5. We hope to procure a nationwide permit, which is a permit we'll procure from the Corps of Engineers that will allow us to cross that wetlands. We do not have a problem providing or meeting parish code as it relates to the necessary right-of-way width, cul-de-sac, and if the Corps will allow us a hard surface paving of that area. It's possible that the Corps may not allow us to hard surface that area when we get the nationwide permit. Again, these should be answers that we have for you when we either come back to preliminary or when we come back for final, meaning that if we have not met your requirements in that regard, we recognize that lots 4 and 5 may not get final approval. So that is an issue to be determined and one that we just don't have answers to at this tentative subdivision hearing. Item 5, the detention areas are unknown as of yet because we haven't done the hydrology, which is, again, the drainage plan will be done in connection with preparation for preliminary subdivision approval. To the extent that detention areas may be needed, they'll obviously be shown on the plan and will be reviewed by your engineering department when they look at our drainage plan. With regard to the Department of Engineering comments, items 1 are a yes, 2 is a yes, 3 we just discussed in item 5 above about the retention pond. 4 is a yes, or at least it's understood that we'll have to be 12 inches above the crown of the street unless we have elevations of lots that suggest to engineering that maybe that's not necessary. Again, we'll have to see what our topo shows as it relates to where the building pads would be on these particular lots. 5 is a yes, 6 has been taken care of. The total acreage is approximately 111 acres, and it is shown as such on the tentative plan that I have. 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all understood, meaning that we will comply, or if we have not done so already. Same with 12 and 13. So I think at the end of the day, we understand all of the comments, agree to those, with the one exception, I think, as of tonight, being that we would like to have the ability at the end of Emery Wood Drive to do a code-mandated cul-de-sac, but do it with crushed limestone.
And that's the cul-de-sac that you would run all the way to the end where it would tie into lots 4 and 5?
No, sir, that's the one going to the north. I think that's the one that the staff had commented on. The other 2 cul-de-sacs at Burrowwood Place East and Burrowwood Place West would in fact be what I'll call code in all respects and particulars.
So the private drive would just be as shown on your plan. You would not do a cul-de-sac to tie in lots 4 and 5 at the very end of the private driveway?
Well, the private drive refers to comment 4. I was referring really to comment 3 under planning. But as to comment 4, if in fact there is a private drive, it would only be as depicted across that wetlands area, going to those 2 lots, and that'll be dependent on what we're able to get from the Corps as to if we can get the crossing, and if so, whether it can be hard surface, and if not, whether it will be crushed. And we realize we will have to report that to you. That won't be something that,
There is no cul-de-sac shown at the end of Emery Wood Drive.
yes, sir, there is.
Not on my plat.
Well, the crushed limestone turnaround,
Not on my plat.
forgive me then. I'm obviously looking at something different than you, and we thought that's what had generated the comment.
This is what they're proposing.
And it's gonna be here.
I thought that well, it is my understanding that a plan had been resubmitted by Mr. McHugh's office that shows that cul-de-sac at the end.
I believe the cul-de-sac that you're talking about is a cul-de-sac inset detail that shows it sort of like an L shape. Is that the one we're talking about? The radius on that's doesn't appear to be 60 foot. I mean, it looks like your L shape might be maybe 60 foot, but the radius doesn't look like it meets the 60 foot.
And we have stipulated, or hopefully I made it clear earlier, that we will make that radius 60 feet to meet code.
And that's going to be at the end of every Emery Wood Drive, correct?
Which is the north-south drive.
Right.
The only exception we'd like is that we would like that cul-de-sac to be crushed limestone.
Well, that would have to, again, a parish can accept that in the maintenance system if it's going to be limestone.
Well,
You're requesting the roads be dedicated to the
When
parish.
we come for preliminary, if we need to put up a performance bond for a period of time to ensure that it will be converted to hard surface, we understand that.
Because you all are planning an extension
Well,
of this Emery Wood.
we would hope that if we do well with the 15 lots, that we would be coming back to you with a second phase and extend to the north. And selfishly, we'd prefer not to put in a concrete or asphalt cul-de-sac, but would rather do limestone. And then, of course,
In doing the calculations necessary, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, because from what I understand reading this, that you all need to know how big the subdivision would be for drainage and detention and for a traffic impact study. Is that correct or not?
The drainage could be done in phases where they account for everything now and address any future issues later. The traffic can be a little bit more difficult to review in that circumstance. What they could do is, if you have an idea of how many lots you intend in the future, you could put that in the traffic study.
we don't.
So it's kind of hard to determine what the traffic impact will be, and somewhat difficult to determine how much drainage and detention is going to be needed. And in this case, it appears there is no drainage or detention. Is that right?
Well, this is a tentative plat. So please understand that the tentative plat is only a conceptual layout of the 15 lots. You do not have, the plat is not required to address any of the hydrology implications, et cetera. And I would suggest to you that even as it relates to traffic, I mean, the only thing before you is the 15-lot subdivision, and I think you have every right to make sure that the impacts from a 15-lot subdivision have been accounted for as per code. Anything beyond that, it'll be our job to come back to you, show you what we want to do, and if we need to amend a traffic study, amend a drainage study, if we have to convert a limestone cul-de-sac, et cetera, we understand that those are all elements that we would need to show you. So, as you know, what we would like to do is get approval of the conceptual plan tonight so that we can go do the necessary detailed studies and come back to you with a comprehensive preliminary plan.
Any further?
Yeah, Paul? I mean, Jeff, I did it again, sorry, Jeff. Yeah, we've actually had this procedure done before where we had maybe a larger view of a bigger place, but in essence, we're just talking about these 15 lots here.
Only
So
those 15.
if he meets again with the hydrology studies and stuff like that and builds his retention pond in the area, and then they develop another area above it or below it or around it, whatever, they still have to meet that requirement. That is correct. Is that right? in
Correct. If they
engineering?
come in with a new phase later,
Right.
they would be starting over. It may be a little bit more difficult to retrofit the needs than
Right, but
starting
that's
over. That's their
up to,
problem.
that's their problem,
We
correct?
would-
Is that correct? We have done this before with other subdivisions.
Correct.
So, you know, and as far as having the limestone, crushed limestones in a temporary place in case it develops further on, or if it doesn't, I don't have a problem with that either. I'd like to make I'll let somebody else talk first, but I would appreciate.
No,
if
go
I could
ahead,
make a mo-
go ahead, because
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
all I was gonna say is, it looked like we're trying to get the cart ahead of the horse here. We're on tentative, and we're talking about stuff in preliminary and final.
Yeah, I mean.
So let's get back to
and I
the tentative
know-
and move on that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make a motion yet because I know there's some other commissioners that would like to discuss this, but I don't have that much of a big problem on allowing this section.
Okay, Dale?
I'll second it.
Dale?
I don't have anything for you.
Thank you.
I'm concerned, like I think a lot of us are, about the lack of data. This is a new development in a new area, so we would like to have a more grasp of what's going on, because it's going to set a precedence down 435 in that area. I think that the expansion to the north, we should know a little bit about that. There's also potential problems in expanding to the north. That's that high-pressure gas line going through this subdivision here that we're showing, and if they're going to build to the north, if you note how the gas line's going to go right through the middle of it. Now, those things are not infallible, obviously. The detention ponds already been spoken about. There is a pond to the west of this development, and is that going to get drainage from this? Now, we're in a hilly area. Paul was right about a lot of the statements he made about why 12 inches up and stuff, because this is not like below I-12. You're up in the hilly areas of the parish. I guess back to the footprint on the 230 acres, we'd like to know at least something written down where this is going to be. They don't have to obviously lay out a plat. And now one of the important things, I think, is why we're going to have individual water and sewage systems. It was stated in here, and the problem is that the parish is under, you know about this, the parish is under, I believe, EPA guarantees or something to this that, I don't want to get into it too deep right now, but we should not be adding subdivisions that do not have a central water and sewage system. So that which I saw in the print here seems not very good for the environment, and also it does not meet our parish guidelines that we try to uphold here and that your department tries to uphold.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, did you finish?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll go, I'm sorry. I thought you just finished.
I think there are a lot of things right now that are still hanging loose. To make a decision in a new area was lacking, to me, looks like a lot of data, and obviously engineering department was concerned about it with the amount, and even the planning department had a lot of significant questions. I know Mr. Shane, tried to address it, but I want to see these things in writing. I want to see what it is, because this is a profound new development going into that area, and it should be done right and not blow up one night.
I believe Mr. Shane wants to respond maybe to
Okay.
some of your comments.
I was going to make a motion anyway.
Okay.
With all due respect, Mr. Mackey, to your comments, I believe you've mischaracterized the purpose of the tentative subdivision review.
No, I haven't.
I'm gonna be, I said with all due respect, I don't mean to be argumentative. And so let me restate it so that you don't misunderstand my comments.
Okay.
But I would like to be corrected by legal counsel, staff, or engineering. Is there any issue as it relates to wetlands or hydrology that is before the commission tonight as it relates to a tentative subdivision review? I'm asking that question of your staff or legal, because I think it's very important. The suggestion that everything's not in front of you simply isn't the case. I understand your reason for wanting to know about those elements, but it's simply stated there's a time and a place. And I don't think tonight at tentative, it's incumbent upon us to provide those answers to you.
Well, technically, you're right, Jeff. However, at tentative, we typically do like the developer to show where the potential detention ponds are, so that may spur some type of discussion or debate.
But how would you know where the detention ponds are going to be if you haven't done the topography and done the drainage study and determined how the water's going to be collected and where it's going to run?
Well, developers generally have a sense of where it's going to go because they do a tentative plan, they're going to follow up with preliminary, and they have a general idea of where they think the ponds are going to go. Certainly, between now and preliminary, they can certainly be adjusted. But again, it's just a conceptual plan to kind of give us an idea where that drainage is.
Well, quite frankly, I think that, I don't disagree with you in that I've brought a lot of tentative plans before that probably had some idea. My point is this: I don't understand the harm in approving a tentative plan because it does not give the developer the opportunity to do anything on the property, yet only gives him the incentive, if you will, to know that the conceptual plan is acceptable and that he needs to go do the studies so that we can bring back the hard answers. We have no hard plan to develop to the north, and if we need to just build a hard surface cul-de-sac on the north end of Emerywood, if that's the name of it, Emerywood Place, we will report that to you when we come back at preliminary. So I don't want someone to think that this is a smoking gun subdivision, because it's really not. Now, with regard to the sewer and water suggestions that you made, and again, I think you're mistaken as it relates to what current parish law is, and I want to be corrected if I'm mistaken. But this is A2 zone property with no parcel, as it turns out, being any less than 3 acres. You have every right under parish and state law to have individual sewer and water systems on those lots.
I didn't say that was the rule. I said guidelines. That's all.
Well, I think the suggestion was made, though, is that perhaps this plan was contra to what perhaps a federal edict might be. I understand what the EPA and DEQ are trying to do, but I don't believe that there's any requirement at this point that prevents individual systems. For that matter, when we have individuals that own 2 acres north of I-12 and come in, I mean, there's no requirement that they be on a central system. They have every right to pull a permit, build a home, and have it on an individual sewer and system and an individual water well. And I believe your subdivision regs allow you to do that again in these larger lot subdivisions. So I don't want the public who watches these meetings, and I'm glad that they do, to believe that this subdivision, tentative subdivision proposal is in some way negligent as it relates to what the current parish standards are.
I understand that, but I still would like to see more than, I mean, this could have just been put on, you know, a little piece of paper for if we can't even look at some of these things. So that's the way I feel, and I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until you can come up with more of the data.
Okay, we already have a motion to approve and second.
There's a motion to postpone. Second, you gotta hear it.
Pardon?
Mr. Davis
If there's
would
a
have
second
to,
to the motion to postpone, we have to hear that first, don't we? No?
We have to address the motion on the floor. There's only a single motion.
so Mr. Davis
So
can
this
withdraw his
motion is actually inappropriate pending the first motion. Unless
for
the first
question.
motion is withdrawn and the second be withdrawn, then we can address the motion to postpone, but we can't have two motions on the same item at the same time.
Okay. So we
I
have
call
a
for a question
motion
on-
and a second to
on the motion.
approve tentative.
Keep in mind, it'll also require a waiver for the public road frontage, so you'll need at least 9 votes, I believe, for that, 8 votes. 8 votes for that.
Mr. Chairman,
On the
before the
tentative?
vote,
Yes, because it requires a waiver of the front public
Mr.
road
Chairman,
frontage.
before the vote, I have at least one question I'd like to address to at least the staff, if I may.
Okay, Mr. Matthews?
There appear to be 18 items of question listed by the Department of Planning and the Department of Engineering. Listening to what Mr. Shane has said, many, if not all of these items may not be required to be answered under the tentative subdivision review. Is that correct? And if it is, then there's a whole lot less concern I would have.
That's correct. Most of the items are largely a warning of what they're going to be expected to do at preliminary.
Okay.
Okay, so, is that true for the Department of Planning also?
Well, excuse me. Well, the comments 4 and 5 are relevant to this, are relevant. If he's agreed to do the cul-de-sac, again, that's your prerogative. If he wants to use the option of maybe doing a cul-de-sac temporary for a certain period of time and put up a performance at the preliminary level, that's acceptable to the staff. However, the parish public road frontage for lots 4 and 5 is a requirement of the code.
I understand that. Number 5, is that a requirement for tentative that a detention pond be depicted, or is that just something that the planning likes to see?
Again, as I've stated earlier, we've always required a detention area to be shown on the plat. Is it required them to show the actual detention and the drainage flow and everything in the outfall? No.
Okay. So the only thing that may be required in tentative is number 4 on the Department of Development. Paul, is there anything under the Department of Engineering that is required for tentative that we have not addressed?
If this is going to be the entire subdivision size, that would address comment number 11, and the rest would be at preliminary.
Okay, that answers my question.
Okay, Dale?
Mr.
Okay.
Doherty?
Yes, sir.
I'm not trying to be a nuisance, really just trying to make sure I understand some of the comments. I don't understand the critical nature of whether this segment of the road is public or private at the tentative. We are not seeking preliminary approval in a work order tonight, so I don't think we need a waiver for a private drive. What if we decided that we wanted to do all private roads in this subdivision in accordance with parish standards?
Well, the fact that this particular private drive is not a hard surfaced roadway, and it's not tied into the terminus with a cul-de-sac. You're putting in a private aggregate roadway to access lots 4 and 5.
Okay,
It's not public road frontage. I understand what you're saying, but if you want to split hairs and call it do a private roadway subdivision, we still require it to be built to a parish standard.
I understand that, okay. Well, then I think for the purposes of the submission this evening, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I would like to suggest that the plat will be amended to show that that segment of road will in fact meet all parish standards. And if we determine that we can't get the permit to do that, when we come back to you at preliminary, we will have to ask for a waiver and show you a design. Again, we want to meet each and every one of your standards, and I would hope that we'll have the answers that you deserve, and particularly good questions that Mr. Mackey asked when we come back at preliminary.
Well, I think you know this commission well enough that if we don't have a good portion of these answered at preliminary, it's not going to go very far.
I'm getting a reminder of that tonight at tentative.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve tentative. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, okay. Do you want to, Dale? Okay, I mean, we can correct it here.
It's fine the way it is.
Okay, all right. Preliminary subdivision review, SD 05-08-019P, Hidden Creek, Ward 1, District 3, developer owner Hidden Creek LLC, engineer is Myers Engineers Limited, Parish Council District Representative Honorable Red Thompson, staff.
The developer's requesting tabling.
Okay, developer has requested, clear the vote, requested this be postponed till the, May meeting, I believe it was? Yes. Is that what his letter said? Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matthews to postpone until the May meeting, second by, Mr. Willie. Please vote on the motion to, postpone. Motion carries. Thank you. Final subdivision review, SD 06-05-016F1P2, Ashton Park, first filing, Part 2, Ward 8, District 8. Developer owner Azalea Lakes Partnership, the engineer Benchmark Group LLC, Parish Council District Representative Honorable Chris Canulet. Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction. The final inspection was made on March 27, 2013. The inspection disclosed that all concrete roads are constructed, curbing and catch basins are constructed. Blue reflectors and signage are in the process of being installed. The developer's engineer will certify that all signage has been installed in accordance with the latest MUTCD. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of $50,800 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the final subdivision request. Mandatory developmental fees are required. Road impact fees, $47,388. Drainage impact fee, $49,016. Fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Pat McElroy with the Azalea Lakes Partnership. We're here as the developers of Ashton Park Filing 1, Part 2, and we also have with us our engineer, which is the Benchmark Group, and we have reviewed the staff comments. Just as an update for the commission members, we have completed all the curbing, all the blue reflectors are in place, all the catch basins are completed, and with weather permitting, this week all the street signage will be installed. We are in agreement, therefore, with items 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we kindly request approval, final subdivision approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. McElroy.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
Staff, have we inspected or re-inspected this property to see that those three things are either have been completed or in the process of being completed?
No, the last inspection was March 27th.
Okay.
So we'll have to verify that once he calls for the inspection.
Okay. I really don't like giving final approval when it's still under construction, but I understand what you have said, that
Yes, sir.
2 of the 3 are complete, and the 3rd will be completed next week. In that case, it's not a dramatic thing, putting up the signs. I know you're gonna put up street signs.
Yes, sir.
Your people that live there would go crazy if you didn't.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
We have a motion to approve final. We have second by Mr. Hines. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank you.
McElroy. Next item, SD 08-04-005 F2, the Villages at Bocage, Phase 2, Ward 1, District 1. Developer owner is First Horizon Incorporated. The engineer is Scalfino Engineering. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on March 28th, 2013. The inspection disclosed that all asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and the roadside ditches are functioning. The following uncompleted items exist at the time of final inspection. A and B are okay. Street name signs are needed. Traffic signs are needed. Blue reflectors are needed. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of $100,200 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments. Mandatory developmental fees are required as follows: road impact fee, $120,624. Drainage impact fee, $124,768. Fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed.
Okay. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the developer of the Villages at Bocage. With regards to the 3 outstanding items, 2 are street signs and traffic signs. All of the necessary preparatory work have been completed for those. Those signs have been ordered, and they should be in either this week or early next, and will be installed immediately, and everything is ready to go with those. The blue reflectors, I believe after talking to the developer this afternoon that those are in. If they're not in now, they will be in by tomorrow. Other than that, the other staff comments are perfectly fine, and we respectfully request approval.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Mr. Matthews.
Paul, did you say that under number 2, A and B have been satisfied?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure I heard that. In that case, I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Second by Mr. Davis to approve. I've got a question probably to staff. I've noticed in Fire District 1 in the greater Slidell area that they're using reflectors on the fire hydrants. And I'm not sure if they still require the reflectors on the street itself. Have you seen any of those?
I think I've seen reflectors on hydrants. It's good to have the reflector in the street. You may have a car parked blocking view of the hydrant, in which case it's good to have a reflector on the street.
Okay, so the parish standards require the reflector on the street, and if the fire district wishes to put it on the hydrant as well, they
They're
can
welcome
do
to
that.
do so.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. No proposed amendments, no old business that I'm aware of. New business. No
Move,
new
we adjourn.
business. Motion to adjourn. Thank you.